People, we're back in Portsmouth, and this week we've got Deniz Beck of the Sustainable Conservation Trust.
Basically, Portsmouth have unbelievable amount of unused or underutilized empty buildings. And that's not really makes sense, not economic sense, not social sense either, because people don't like empty buildings around where they live. So we have about nearly 70 different scale fortifications. And these are not small buildings. I meet so many creatives here. Can you imagine if you just give them a little bit sort of availability, say, this building open, come and do stuff. I think it will be unbelievably quick from there on, the way that our creativity in the city will excel, I think. I never ask, is it difficult? I always think, that, is this the right thing to do?
Hi, have I said your name right?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
Deniz. Yeah, welcome to the What's Going On show. The show where we shine a light on people doing things in communities. And you with the SCT are doing something. And that's what we're going to find out about today. So a little tradition I've got in this show is, instead of me giving you an introduction, I like to just give it straight over to you. So who in a nutshell is Deniz?
Oh, Deniz or SCT?
You.
Oh, me. Only than me. I was born in Turkey and moved here 32 years ago. So, and since 18, I've been away from Istanbul as well. So, if you look at it that way, I kind of live different places. I don't really have much sort of base anywhere else other than England. I suppose from young age, I was exposed to a lot of old buildings and heritage, although I loved contemporary architecture when I was studying in Istanbul architecture. I never thought I would end up in heritage environment, but I qualify now as a conservation architect, and I've been working primarily adaptive reuse, empty buildings, and often they're ex-military, old Victorian fortifications, and cultural sort of reuse, mostly for community. And that's what happened last few years. So 3.5 years ago, that led us to set up SCT, which is not for profit organization. Basically, Portsmouth is sort of landlocked, and we don't have that much space. We have a lot of open space, which is precious. We don't want to build. We don't want to, we want to keep them. So that makes you to look at what we have next, which is for a city is landlocked, quite heavily populated. We have unbelievable amount of unused or underutilized empty buildings. And that's not really makes sense, not economic sense, not social sense either, because people don't like empty buildings around where they live. And at the same time, we have a lot of creatives, and this city is really, really creative. That's one of the things that I was really blown by when I first moved here, because I came to Salisbury Green. First 10 years I lived there, and it was like, when you want to go out, where would you go? Would you go to Southampton or Portsmouth? It was always Portsmouth, the seaside, the vibrancy of the city. And it reminded me a lot where I come from, Istanbul and Ortaköy, with the Bosphorus view, being right next to the seaside, open spaces, and lots of creative people. So yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, cool. So you said from a young age you was exposed to old buildings. How?
So my dad, in 50s and 60s in Turkey, in Istanbul, there was a big sort of rebuilding happening, and they had this big timber, huge, lovely houses and sitting in a big gardens. But then people wanted to live in modern apartments, and people were demolishing their houses and giving them to developer to build apartment blocks. So then they would give them like few apartments, and you can distribute them between your children. One of them will be your income, the other one you will live, you're set. His dad and my granddad and him, they used to buy to build and to demolish, and they look at it as a material library, which is really trendy now. So they were really trend-setting at that time. So this is one of the most sustainable way of, I suppose, to build. So they used to take like a Lego bricks, one by one, all the material reusable, demolish it that way, one by one. So in like school holidays, I would go to his shop. One time you walk in, it would be lots of beautiful old doors, beautiful, gorgeous handles and hinges. I still have a thing about it. All this like ironmongery, it makes me like crazy. So yeah, and then other people, people who couldn't afford to buy a place, they would make their own little building, or they would repair their own house. So they will come and buy as a resale type of thing, like, second-hand door. Sometimes brick, sometimes. Yeah, it's really funny. My brother used to straighten old screws, old nails for him in the summertime. So he would have like a big box of like nails, but it's all sort of folded, and then we would sort of help him to make them sellable.
Interesting. Okay, so that was like the beginning, if you will,
Yeah.
your passion. Okay, that's interesting. So repurposing, probably come to this later, but we can touch on it now. So for you, repurposing or reusing, how important is that to you, and why?
I think it's really important because I grew up in Istanbul, and so I was born in 1968, and when I left, I was 18. But I grew up, people will recycle jars and knit, and people did really value what they have, and throwing things away wasn't a thing. Not because we were very poor, but I think just people valued that. Now people do it different reasons. So I was always cautious, what, and we also use like a hand-me-down clothes, but not out of necessity. It's just a nice thing to do. Like people now, they can afford, but they still use buying things secondhand. And I have a habit of buying a lot of stuff from charity shops. I think it's quite nice to have a thing that somebody cared and had it, and for one reason or another they gave it away, and then you have that. So.
Interesting. Okay, so you went on to study architecture. Was it from watching your dad, watching your family? Was it from that fueled that, or what was your aim with that?
That's I did think about that a lot. Why? My granddad didn't study, but he was very hardworking guy. I think he was very poor. He worked really hard, saved some money, and he built his own apartment block. And basically, I was one, I think, when they first completed and we moved in there. And he gave flat for each brother. He had 4 brothers. He had 4 sons, and my dad was one of them. So all the sons had sons. I was the only girl. And he had a huge issue with girls. He didn't think girls has any value at all. And he behaved that way as well. So I was always sort of pushed away because he was really strict. Not pushed away like physically, but like invisible. But the lady, believe it or not, at that time, who did the drawings for him, the architect who did the drawings was female. I remember him being so courteous and so sort of respectful to this woman when she was talking to him about this other project that they were doing together. And I was probably 4 when I sort of saw that. Probably that affected me a lot. Yeah, I think, and also later on, when you start sort of studying, it was quite clear um, my favorite subjects were geometry, geography, rather than sort of history, believe it or not. um, so, that was sort of, and creativity as well, so that art. But I wanted to do something that I can actually directly be helpful to people. So architecture was, I suppose, natural.
The route, oh, the natural route. Okay, so you went on to study architecture. You said you never thought you would go into dealing with historical buildings and stuff. So when you graduated, where did that take you?
Yeah, so I didn't it wasn't straightforward. I didn't graduate right away. I had in my third year studying, again, loving contemporary architecture, everything to do with Bauhaus, Alvarado. So um, I, and also growing up in city like Istanbul, so everything is really, really, history. So it's not really interesting to me at that time. I did a project that it was the one of the fortifications, purpose of fortification. That was my dissertation, and I don't know why. I think because we used to go there for concerts, and I really liked the idea of using it for like that kind of cultural activities. And that was the only one time that I ever did anything to do with old building or heritage related sort of project. Um, on my third year, there was an opportunity to travel. So I took the time out and I became an air hostess for 3 years. And that gave me a lot of sort of opportunity to see other cities. And I just fell in love traveling and meeting new cultures, new people. But then I come back and graduated. So there was a gap at that time. And I had my daughter at that time as well. So it was a lot of things happening in one go. Yeah. And years later, when I come to England, one of the first jobs as a residential architecture local company I work for, Spitbank Port was given to them, the owner. So what happened? The director went to see the site. Bit foolish, really. He went there with a sort of lightweight jacket. He come back, he was frozen to the bone. He come to me, he said, "I do not want anything to do with this project ever again. It's yours." And I'm really thankful for him because it kind of started that career for me.
Okay. So how did you get to the UK?
Oh, okay. Yeah, in Istanbul, I was working in hotel construction, one of the Hyatt Regency hotels. The company I was working, they were doing FF&E, which is like a fitted furnitures and interior of that 5-star hotel, which is a really nice hotel in Istanbul now. There I met my son's dad. He was working on as a I suppose we were like subcontractor to them, if you like. So after 9 months or so, he worked there. When he finished his sort of work, and he came here, and we come for holiday for a short while with my daughter, and she loved it here, and that was it.
Wow. So that's how you made it here. Okay. So cool. You worked on that project then, and then it started up a career for you. So with heritage and stuff like that. So yeah, talk me through it then. How did that escalate? Because we're making our way to SCT, but we're getting there
slowly.
Yeah.
Senior crew. It's really interesting. Portsmouth is unbelievably rich when it comes to fortifications because collectively, some people might see this, oh, too many of those. But I think that's the strength. If you're coming here with the external eye, someone who doesn't know this exists, it's just bonkers. it's unbelievable, even for local people as well. And sometimes I say, "Oh, do you know the Fort Cumberland is there?" They're like, "Oh, I thought that was just the trees," you know, because they're all very well hidden. So we have about really 70 different scale in this region fortifications. It's a lot, and these are not small buildings. I mean, imagine this building. It's about maybe 10 times the size of it, you know. So when Spitbank Fort project started, that was quite a long process. So we did the conversion of it because it's like a man-made island. So logistics, getting material and everything was an issue. Schedule monument we had to deal with, historic England. So these are all the things that I had to learn while doing. But during that project, or the next few years after that, did 4 sea forts. I worked on all of them. So that kind of, if you look at them, the Royal Engineers who designed these fortifications, and they didn't only do it in this country, they did it everywhere that Navy went. So I've been to San Helena, for example. The fortifications, they're very identical almost, the ones. So if you look at the photos I took there, and you put the photos at Spitbank Fort, Fort Cumberland, certain details, identical. So you can see that, you know, same drawing office did all of them. I just fell in love with the shapes and design. I just love them, and it kind of that very niche skill set, I suppose, to do that, and then that translates to another building like that. And before working in that company, I worked another local company. They used to do supermarket fit outs, but they would, with the acquisition of Safeway to Asda's, that's what we used to do. We used to go to Safeway, and Asda had their own way. So you go in and look at all the services, what is there needs to be come out, and how you would adopt them. And you have to do that really quickly with a certain budget. So that gave me a skill set that it was really useful when you mix it with the heritage building, how to read the significance, and how would you work with around the permissions and the need of the user, timescale, all sorts of other conditions. Yeah, and then the Fort Cumberland project came after that. No, sorry, Hot Walls project came after that, after the sea forts. And that was a government-funded project, so we had money to spend to do the things that we wanted to do. So it's a different model. And Fort Cumberland project came through their property team. They had a budget to look after the building. That was like more like maintenance money. So all of a sudden, from this big budget to go a lot smaller, so you have to be a lot more creative. So we worked different model there, and that kind of generated different ideas, thinking, so if the money gets smaller and smaller, what would you do? How would you still deliver? So then that whole thing sort of resulted, and maybe there is a need, which it was obvious. Fort Whitley, for example, run by Peter Ashley charity. So they had some needs there, but they didn't really have any budget. So we'd look at it, how we would do that, help them without getting money. But as a commercial company, it's really hard to do that. So it was clear that, you know, me and some of the people that I was talking about as issues, we found SCT.
Makes sense. Okay, the only question I have might be really common knowledge, I don't know. But how is a building classed as a heritage place or a heritage building? How does that get the classification? Have I said that correct?
Yeah, no, you did. It's actually really interesting. Maybe I'm not the right person to ask because I have different views now. All the time it changed. Historic England has, it's the governing body, so they have a certain criteria why significant. So there's like evidential value. They have different sort of classes of values. So who lived there and maybe significant things happened, or the building has architectural and particular character that is very rare. So the significance and the preciousness has levels as well. So it's not democratic.
Okay.
So there's like a different levels of listing, and then even higher one, scheduled monuments. But I work with the community, I think community has their own value as well. And yeah, I think these the way that people value them, I think is changing. The organizations are listening to that as well. And also environmental factors now as well. So,
Yeah, so
yeah, existing buildings are full of material. There's a locked up carbon in there. So, we'll have to really think, do we have to demolish or do we have to build new at all, really?
interesting. Okay, so SCT was born. So you said 3 years ago? 4?
3.5 now.
3.5 years. So it was born, and you said 70 buildings or 70 projects. Are they all under SCT or?
No, 70 different scale of fortifications in the area, and a lot of them is underused or not used at all, or some of them it can be seen as a ruin for others, but I think they all have amazing potential, if you ask me.
Interesting. Okay, so since you started SCT, how has it been in Portsmouth in particular? How has it been launching it?
It was really good. I think first people, you see these big scale paintings there. We launched with Spray and Save. We call it festival. It was more like a jam, spray jam. 4 street artists, local. We gave them 4 boards and we gave them a concept, an idea, and they ignored it completely, which I like that. And in almost like sort of theatrical, very animated way, they did the work in front of people passerby. We did that in hut walls. The idea is when you see an empty building that it's been neglected, first people actually properly look is the graffiti artist, right? And also, if you look at heritage building, doing graffiti on there, it's really frowned upon. So I'm kind of looking at it, turning around, inviting them more controlled way to do what they do really good, because that brings different kind of audience, different discussions. Because while they're doing it takes a while, people start talking about, so what is this about? You're talking about, do you know this building is empty, or do you know this was empty and we did this and this happened now? What do you think about that? So it's really good time to talk to people because they're there for something else, but then you're asking them really important questions to understand what they actually feel about that empty building or underused buildings around there in their community, and also what other needs they have, what sort of things they want around them. Do they want like sort of more young people doing stuff, more cultural activities? So yeah, we start using that a lot. So that's what we started with. That was the launch day with the Spray and Save.
Okay. So what are some of the challenges you faced?
I don't know. I do see, I think it's the personality thing. For me, it's a challenge, is almost, it becomes an obsession. I feel like, it's a red button. When people say, oh, this building, don't go there, you can't do anything about it. It just, I can't take it off my list. It always stays there. Maybe we can't work on it right away, but it kind of pays off. I think that's that. It's just people being quite set in their ways, and they don't easily agree when you show something a little bit different. They all understand traditional method of doing a project. you need millions.
Mhm.
You need huge, big team of people. They're all highly qualified. They all cost a lot of money. And you spend months, but that building or whatever it is that is there still leaking water, ingress. Nobody did anything to that building, but I don't want to do that. I want them to open their doors, let a community, it could be artists, it could be a charity group, it could be any other group, to just enter the building. So, because what happens when you're in the building, you start, those problems become your problems, right? Before that, door shut, you don't know that building is leaking. If there's a water drip here, we all get up and do something about it, right? Yeah. So I think if you do it that way, it actually, but then people who own the building, because it's a new way of looking, I suppose, and it's quite not traditional way of looking at it. They just push all this like insurance leases and all the important things. But if you wanted to solve that problem, you will find solution rather than using them as a, no, answer is no.
Wow. So, reading between the lines there. So, what's the resistance to change like in Portsmouth?
What do you mean?
Are they
Resistant to
stuck
change
in-
offered? I don't know if it's a Portsmouth issue. I think Portsmouth's slower than everywhere else, I found though. I don't know why. Because there's a lot of creativity. I think there's more maybe red tape here. I don't know. But saying that, I mean, there's a huge amount of interest and different, even the organizations that if I am critical, there are a lot of people there that are very helpful and want to do good. I think the wanting element is there. It's just how that people don't maybe invest that much in there. There's a little bit that happening probably. People probably want to work with people that they worked before and they don't want to sort of try something new. I don't know.
That's interesting. Is it a running theme throughout all the people I've met? Maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
So you're not alone. You're not
good,
alone there.
good to know.
Yeah. So that's the resistance to change in Portsmouth. You said it's slower than elsewhere because of the red tape. But where are other places that you've been where it was easier?
Gosport.
Gosport's easier.
Yeah.
That's a shock. Because I don't know, because I thought it would be the home of, well, this is the home of the Navy, but most of them live over there. So that's interesting.
I don't know. It might be a cultural thing, although it's not that far from each other, but it feels different. We've been offered places, and we've been given a lot more sort of scope to work around in Gosport environment. Yeah,
because I mean, abroad, I've seen this. I mean, I used to live in Germany, and it was a big thing there that they had, artists in a space like this. But here it's rare. I mean, it is a cultural thing, but yeah.
But at the same time, I think I meet so many creatives here. They just, they're there and they're doing it. So, they're very resilient. Can you imagine if you just give them a little bit sort of availability, say, this building open, come and do stuff. I think it will be unbelievable quick from there on, the way that our creativity in the city will excel, I think.
Amazing, yeah. Because I say this city is quite creative. It can be more creative, right? Okay, so for you, how important, I mean, it's very important, but how important is culture in growing a city?
Oh, I think culture is in everything, isn't it? Especially intangible culture, the way that we interact with people and the way that we pass the information from one generation to another. Culture does that really well because, like myself, I said everyone I didn't like stories because I didn't like the story, the way that, not sort of story, history, the way that they teach at school. So you have to remember the years and the war and who did it. It's like, I don't care. But then you tell me about somebody's family, this person did that and they wanted so adventurous, they wanted to go there. And then all of a sudden it become really interesting because we can relate to that. I don't relate to someone who was a admiral and go and, fight with people and win wars. But I understand how is it to have your dad is going away or your mom not being well or, having sisters and brothers. So culture does that really well. And also it's moving as well. It's say theater or talking or you hear singing. Because there are different ways of learning things. So when we put the history, lock it in a book, you have to get it that way, really dry. It's one way of learning, but if you experience it, and that's different, isn't it?
So much different. Okay, so SCT's doing that now. What exciting things have you got coming up? Can you say?
Yeah, nothing secret here.
No.
Maybe it's just almost too open everything. We have we're in a bit of a lull period, very busy for a lull period. We're waiting to hear from a couple of the funding application we did for particular projects. One of them is Slaughterhouse in Gosport. So we apply for national lottery funding to run that place, a bit like what we're doing here in a bigger scale. It's a bigger building with a complete new set of people for 3 years. And the whole project is longer than that, actually. But we have the funding we apply for 3 years. So we will hear that in a couple of weeks' time. So, yeah, keeping everything crossed. So that will be a really fast-moving once it happens because we've been talking about it quite a long while and planning. And there are other, some of the projects we've been working over from almost the day that SCT started. So that seems to be now engaging. There's another quite big project in Fort Brokers, again in Gosport.
Okay.
That is English Heritage owned. So they have a new CEO. The Gosport MP, Caroline Deniz, invited him to the fort. And a couple of weeks ago we met him. And because we've been working on that project for a while, but it's gone sort of quiet. But with his appointment and understanding what we wanted to do with the Caroline being so sort of supportive and almost forceful, really, I like that. She's already putting other people together from local, external, trying to make that work. So I don't think it's going to be quick, but at least it's moving now. So that will be quite a big challenge for us. Exciting opportunity.
Very exciting. So that's what's to come. Okay, great. So I think we can actually wrap up there. So where are we expecting to see SCT? Do you plan ahead?
I do, but then we ignore all of that. I am quite, I'm a very yes person. I love new ideas, but that can be quite detrimental. So you need to be careful. But we have, I just paired up with Gail. She's amazing. You met her earlier, probably. So she's my yang to my yin. We work much better since she's been, and we have new people arrived as well to support us with finance and business development as well. So there are a lot of good sort of puzzle pieces coming together that it will help us. So yeah, it's really exciting. We do plan ahead, but we have to also understand what's really important, where we have to put our energy. It's not about easy wins. It's about what's meaningful, what's sort of in the core. I always ask myself, like, you know, is it worth me doing? Is it worthwhile doing it? Not. I never ask, is it difficult? I always think, is this the right thing to do?
Is it helping people, like you said earlier? Interesting. Well, Deniz, that brings us to a lovely close on that part. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much.
All right, that's part two. Part two coming up. Cool. So, Deniz, welcome to part two. This is the part where we go out into the street. So we went out to the streets of Portsmouth and we asked a question. It's something about what we discussed, something about what you do. And yeah, feel free to stop the video at any time. Feel free to react. We can wait until the end. It's entirely up to you. So yeah, let's go ahead and see what we had to see. What I had to say.
I'm dying to see this.
What do you think should be done with old, unused buildings?
Turned into something useful.
Do you think you should knock them down?
No, because like they'll probably be built on anyway. Do you know what I mean?
What do you think should be done with old, unused buildings? Should we just knock them down?
Maybe create more like green space.
Yeah. Or like apartments, like there's a lot of like homelessness and stuff, especially in London, and like just going around everywhere really. So if there's unused space, then it could be used to live in space for people that can't afford to live in like nice places really. I don't know.
What do you think should be done with old, unused buildings?
Well, I guess there's a lot of requirement for homeless, obviously for immigration is obviously a big thing in the city at the moment. So, you know, there's buildings to be used. Then there's no point in them hanging around, being empty and being unused. So yeah, so I suppose it would be the amount of homeless, the amount of housing, refugees that come into the country needing support.
What do you think should be done with old, unused buildings?
With old, unused buildings, depends who owns them. Which ones are we talking about?
So let's say that you can react.
That is very good.
Yeah.
Good answer. It's very true because that is the actually determinant. You know, the differentiation.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if it's owned, in what instance? Can you give us an example?
Well, in some institutions, they hold on to them, and they don't. You don't even know that there's empty building there. You just know by chance, and you're not even allowed to ask sometimes those questions.
Wow.
But yeah, depends. Some people say, I have an empty space and I want something interesting happen today. That's what happened with the slaughterhouse. The owner sort of came to us. And that's like a really different way of approaching, isn't it?
Interesting. Say they're listed buildings. You know what a listed building is?
Yeah.
So listed buildings, for example, this is a listed building behind us, the Guildhall. So what do you think, if that was vacant, for example, what do you think they should do with it?
I think it should be community based. Like if there's something, like for example, I don't know, if a community is lacking a home, like if there's a large amount of people that are homeless, create it into like a homeless shelter. If there is lack of dental care, turn it into a dental practice, government owned type of vibe. See what does the community need and then give it that specific need or something. I don't know.
No, good. That's great. And what about yourself?
Yeah, what she was saying, that's a good answer. What the community needs. Like if a community doesn't have a big church, turn it into a church. If it doesn't have, like you were saying, maybe a school, like if the current school isn't big enough to, if it's too small for the students that they have, turn into a bigger school. So yeah, seeing the need and using it to meet the need.
What do you think should be done with old, unused buildings?
They should be turned into accommodation for people who require accommodation.
So that was the question.
See, all the experts. I mean, this is the thing. Unfortunately, kind of forget our where we should get our information. It's great that people educated and they are expert in their field. We take it from them, but ask them, ask the community, people walking around on the road, around there, what do they think about it? Often those buildings, their destiny is sealed by people who doesn't even pass by in front of it. People forget when a building is demolished. If I was passing by in front of it, going to work every day, that is my thing. And all of a sudden it's demolished. What happens to my emotional being? What's my safe space? What do I feel about, what I can control around me? You know what I mean? It's these are really
Interesting, yeah.
valid things, as well as, king's son born there, or I don't know, architecturally this building is so special because the brick is that, or stone came from whatever, the detail is there.
Yeah, so it's like you were saying earlier, it's not about, you don't really care what certain parts of history mean, you don't really care. It's what emotional value it has to you. Makes sense. So another question that I have based on that. So I spoke to a building surveyor, it wasn't included in this, but I spoke to a building surveyor, to my friend, and he said an issue, and you can address this, but an issue with restoring old buildings, he said, is the prices, the costs it entails to actually renovate it or do whatever you have to do is a lot. He said, why don't you just knock it down and create a green eco space?
So your friend, nothing against him, but I hate him. The problem that we have is people like that. They don't realise they get a couple £1,000 to write a report to do a condition survey. And just say, oh, it's not viable anymore because you need to upgrade all the system, whatever. And I don't agree with that, because every building has a value, even if it's like a 4 walls left. We did look at this in detail. It's true, if it's listed building, you need to bring someone properly qualified and do a lot of work before you actually do anything in the building. Hence why SCP come about. We do that for feasibility preparation for application, or what you can do, getting permissions for you if it's a building that you could use, that you have and then you needed to use for the community. But secondly, also, when you're living or working, functioning in that building, because it's listed, you can't repair, you need to know a particular way how to deal with that. We do that training as well. So we notice if people, there's a lot of sort of volunteers, isn't it? Especially with the community project. If instead of then just sweeping floor, I don't know, whatever they do in there, if they learn what kind of paint to use, what to do, what not to do, lime water, it's not a very difficult thing to do. You just have a half-day course, and if somebody giving you the formula, what to use, so give you the material, give you the tools, explain how you do it, and then be supportive all the way there. People, volunteers could do that. You don't need to pay a specialist company, because as soon as it's conservation project, if the daily rate is X, it becomes 4 times X, and that's what makes those buildings to sort of fall in disrepair, which I don't agree with that word either. I think everything could be repaired. These buildings, we've been here over 100 years, most of them. After we're gone, they will be still there if we don't demolish them. Even if we didn't do much to them. We just need to make sure there isn't water coming in. And often these are really easy things to fix.
Interesting. Nice. Well, yeah, Deniz, any final words on the video?
I just love how connected people to their community, and they're all lovely people as well. They all talk about homelessness and issues with the immigration. These are really serious, And also climate change is a big, it's not even change, it's emergency now, isn't it? Big issue. So by reusing existing stock, you right away, doing your bit and more, and picking someone from the street, putting in there. These are all, it's not like a rocket science. I don't know why trying to do good is so difficult.
Strong statement. Right. Well, Deniz, that brings us to a lovely close then. And I've enjoyed today. It's been really good.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing what happens next. Amazing. Well, that's a wrap. All right.